So recently there was a terrorist attack on a fertility clinic in California, and the only person to die in what appears to be a suicide bombing is a 25-year-old man who describes himself as a pro-mortalist. So on the plus side, at least he didn't get anyone else. But he left a little manifesto. There was Guy Edward Bartkus, a 25-year-old man, about 35 miles away from this. He left a 30-minute audio and left a manifesto. And in it he says, I just want to explain why I'm doing this. Basically, it comes down to I'm angry that I exist and that, nobody got my consent to bring me here. Oh my God. This is like, I don't want to make light of this because he was trying to murder people. But it's hard not to make light of this because the guy is a moron. And imagine saying, I didn't give my consent to be born. It's like, well, of course, how could you? You didn't exist. How could you possibly have consented to it? You would have to be born for us to ask your consent to this thing, meaning that there are some things in life that happen to you without your consent. Every bald man on earth could be like, I didn't consent to losing my hair. No, you didn't. I didn't consent to growing old. No, you didn't. I didn't consent to having the parents that I had or living in the town that I live in or being born in the country I'm born. No. And yet that doesn't make these things bad. Going bald's probably bad, but the rest of it's pretty good. And so this is the product of a morality system that hinges purely on the notion of consent. This is the very essence of liberalism. The society around us we consent to and we construct in the way that we feel like it according to liberalism, which is, again, not true. We don't consent. You didn't consent to any of these things. You were just born into them. And they became normal because you were born into it. But the liberal ideal is that we consent to everything that happens to us. And, well, of course, there is always going to be one thing that we can't consent to happen to us, which is coming into existence. And so this is just if you've only got one moral system, which is liberalism, I want freedom and equality for my will over reality, and I must consent to everything that happens to me. Well, this is where you end up with that. This is the end product. Well, hang on a second. I consented to everything else, maybe. He didn't, but let's just assume he did. But I didn't consent to be born because I couldn't consent to that, and therefore that something happened to me against my will, and therefore I'm angry that I exist. Now this is, deeply hubristic at the very least, to say, well, I should be in control of absolutely everything that happens to me up until and including whether I exist or not is a bit bonkers. And actually, it turns out that there are other kinds of ways of looking at the world that are just better for us, right? There are just more wholesome, more sane, more sensible. And at the end of the day, you'll eventually end up, if you can, at the most extreme perspective of liberalism, actually quite comfortably end up at this place. And I think actually a lot of left-wing people are kind of angry that they exist and that they've been told, well, everything is supposed to be about what you agree to. And they say, well, I didn't agree to any of this then. And okay, well, if that's the only moral compass that they have, why wouldn't they be angry at that? He described himself as anti-life, adding, quote, I'm very against IVF. It's extremely wrong. These are people who are having kids after they've sat there and thought about it. How much more stupid can it get? Well, most kids are glad to be here. Most kids like life. Most people like life. And actually, losing life is the bad thing. And I'm sure that if you'd asked this chap about his opinion on Palestine, he wouldn't have come along and go, well, I don't like the Israelis, but I'm glad they're bombing the Palestinians because at least they're escaping this terrible life. I very much doubt you would have said that. So he has a website, and he put up little frequently asked questions for his manifesto. So I thought we'd go through some of it just to see how profoundly confused this poor chap was. So he, of course, calls himself pro-mortalist. He says, pro-mortalist, so you're just psycho killers? You're pro-psycho killers? He says, no. Understand your death is already a guarantee, and you can thank your parents for that one. Well, no, your parents aren't the reason that you die. Your parents are the reason that you live. You die because you are a human, and all humans are mortal. So it is not your parents' fault that you will die. It is just the nature of reality. Maybe you could say you're raging at God himself. All a pro-mortalist is saying is let's make it happen sooner rather than later, and preferably peaceful rather than some disease or accident, which is why you went with a bomb, isn't it? to prevent your future suffering, and more importantly, the suffering your existence will cause to all other sentient beings. Yeah, but if you want all other sentient beings dead anyway, what difference does it make if they suffer? And what kind of perspective is this, that life is only suffering? I don't agree. There are many beautiful things about life, and future suffering, again, this is the most materialistic liberal prejudice, is the only standard by which they have to judge right and wrong. All they have is utilitarianism, because their worldview is entirely materialistic. Like, I think there are things that are worth suffering for, because I realize I've described myself before as a materialist, and when I'm being lazy, it's just easy to just say, yeah, well, that's the case. But I actually do think there is something transcendent, although I'm not saying that I'm religious and I'm not saying that I believe in God. But there is definitely something metaphysical about the universe. And so I'm not just purely in favor of us defaulting back to a utilitarian worldview. In fact, I despise utilitarianism, because actually, no, pleasure is not the highest good. So pain is not the greatest evil. In fact, many pains are completely necessary to achieve any kind of good. Suffering builds character. Can you imagine the kind of person you'd be if you'd never felt pain in all of your life? If you'd never felt discomfort, if you'd never been unhappy? What kind of person would you be? You'd be a really ungrateful one. That's what you'd be. You'd be the kind of person that people wouldn't want to be around. So actually, suffering is a necessary component of being a human being. And this guy was promised, well, we're gonna make it so that you never suffer, so that you consent to everything, and he's just taken that to its logical conclusion. So anyway, he carries on. The end goal is for the truth, ephilism, I've never even heard of that, to win. I don't know what that is. And once it does, we can finally begin the process of sterilizing this planet of the disease of life. Embarrassing, like sophistic nonsense. Life can only continue as long as people hold the delusional belief that it is not a zero-sum game, causing senseless torture and messes it can never or only partially clean up. Well, the problem is, you're looking for a kind of consistency in something that just isn't consistent, right? I mean, there's no point explaining to him, the man's dead. But for anyone wondering, he's looking for a kind of rational consistency. Again, liberalism being the philosophy that attempts to ground all of human morality in reason itself. But the problem is, human morality is actually not grounded in reason. There's a common misattributed quote to Nietzsche, which is, if you kill a cockroach, you're a hero. If you kill a butterfly, you're a villain. Therefore, morals have aesthetic criteria. That's not a real Nietzsche quote, but it does speak to something true, doesn't it? Because actually, morality does have non-rational, sentimental, habitual, and aesthetic criteria to it. What do we feel right and wrong are, rather than what can we rationally calculate right and wrong to be? And so the liberal project is constantly on unstable ground, saying, well, look, we need to find a rational perspective from which we can calculate deductively what morality is. But that's not how morality works. And so there's no need for us to clean up anything. The only thing we have to do is take Aristotle's advice. Again, really all moral philosophy ends in Aristotle. There's just no point in going any further. Just live a virtuous life. Just be a good man, live a virtuous life, and everything will fall into place for you. He says, I think we need a war against pro-lifers. God, this guy sounds very Reddit, doesn't he? It's clear that at this point, these people aren't only stupid, they simply do not care about the harm they're perpetuating by being willing agents for a DNA molecule. All right, kid. Like, this is just very, very Reddit, basically. They should not be seen as tolerant to any intelligent or caring person. Don't be fooled by the ones who play stupid and pretend they don't understand these simple truths. But these aren't true. That's the thing. What you're saying is very one-sided and frankly very childish. Like, this is a person who has had other deep mental health issues, clearly. This is not really about the rational side of the brain. Again, the elephant has made its decision and the rider is just trying to post hoc justify what they've done. It's just their way of playing with you and saying we don't care. A lot of psychos are attracted to philosophy because they love to play mind games with people. Oh, really? Interesting. Their intent is not to find any kind of truth. Oh, really? Is it not? These psychos who are attracted to philosophy, they're not looking for truth. Interesting. Most online debates I've seen are really not debates. It's one person fooling another into thinking it's a debate, when in reality, the one doing the fooling has no intent of changing their mind, and if anything, that's both parties. Honestly, this guy really needed to get off Reddit. He really seems like a Redditor to me. What group of philosophies does this all relate to? Negative utilitarianism, ethylism. Again, I've never heard of that. Abolitionist veganism. Basically, philosophies that realize that religion is retarded and that there is an objective value in the universe. Okay, if religion is retarded, where does the objective value originate? It lies in the harm being experienced by sentient beings. But the thing is, that's just contingent, right? So when sentient beings, or before they existed, there was no objective value in the universe. And after we cease to exist, there will be no objective value in the universe. So are you sure this is not just you saying this is subjective value, but moreover, this is just your prejudice against the concept of harm? Harm is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's a good thing. You know, when you're lifting weights, you're harming your body. You're harming your muscles when you lift weights. When you go for a really long run, you're harming yourself in the aim of becoming stronger, fitter, healthier. And self-sacrifice is a noble thing. When you sacrifice yourself for someone else, you're willingly taking on harm. And yet, that's what heroism is. But again, that's not material, is it? Can't bring me a pound of heroism. That is a metaphysical concept that we recognize. And so we remember the names of dead heroes long, long after they've died. I mean, there's a reason that I know the name Gilgamesh or Achilles or Alexander or Caesar or whatever. You see my point. There is much more to life than simply going, well, it's just pain that is bad. It's like, no, some people like pain. Some people have a fetish for pain. Some people understand that pain is about building character. This person is just trying to escape being alive. And okay, fair enough. But don't try to take other people with you. That's terrible. Anyway, he carries on waffling about this sort of nonsense. And he says, look, I've known for a few years now I wasn't going to allow myself to make it past my 20s. Okay, recently his best friend killed herself, which is terrible. They're people who are just really let down by modernity. And, oh, here we go. Here's the proof that he's a Redditor. We were both anti-sex. Don't mistake that for asexual. I'm talking like r/anti-sex misandrists. Right, so he has been on Reddit plenty then. Veg antinatalist, negative utilitarians, also both had borderline personality disorders. Anyway, we got along quite well and it was very nice, blah, blah, blah. And so he links her Reddit as well. So he's someone with a mental condition who spends a lot of time on Reddit, gets into weird, very online philosophies, and then commits a suicide bombing against an IVF clinic because really he just needed to get off the internet. And again, really, this is really what this is how, and liberalism has constructed all of this, right? His entire morality, the world he lives in, and the fact that he doesn't know what he's doing. He thinks, right, okay, well, what's the plan? And the plan is just to prevent himself from suffering. Well, okay, I've got a personality disorder. How do I interpret that? That means I've got to end up in the Thanos position, basically, which is just, I mean, it's just sad, frankly. And I'm just really, really glad he didn't harm anyone else. This could have been an absolute tragedy, at least more so than it actually was.